It's time now for our meditation. Again, let's get settled in our seats and let that white light come down through our crown chakra into the pink of our heart, and hear these words of Julia Cameron as your own. My spirit is large enough for any circumstance. I am enough. I have wisdom enough. I have faith enough. I know enough. I do not need to strive or strain. I do not need to reach or worry. I am enough. I am enough. I allow the universe to act through me. The universe is more than enough. And so am I. My soul is rich beyond my knowing. I honor the Creator within me. I carry riches, jewels, and abundance. I have a bountiful heart. I have a bountiful heart. I am dowried by love, by compassion, by companionship. I act with generosity. I am sourced in God. All goodness flows to me and through me. All goodness flows to me and through me. There is no limit to what I can accomplish. I am the hand of life flowing toward greater life. My creations are the creations of the Creator within me. I create with freedom and power. I create with bliss and excitement. Through me and in me, the powers of the universe move to expansion. I am within that power, expanded by that power. It is within me and is expanded through me. As the universe is powerful and good, so too am I. I am enough. So it is. So we choose it. Amen. You can come back and be in this space and this time. I have to tell you, this talk was yet another adventure for me. So, order, heaven's first law. Is it? And how does it work? Okay. Say first of God above or man below, what can we reason but from what we know? Of man, what see we but his station here, from which to reason or which to refer? Through worlds unnumbered, though the God be known, 'tis ours to trace him in ours, our own. He, who through vast immensity can pierce, sees worlds on worlds compose one universe. Observe how system into system runs, what other planets circle other suns, what varied being peoples every star. May tell why heaven has made us as we are. But of this frame, the bearings and the ties, the strong connections, nice dependencies, gradations just, has thy pervading soul looked through? Or can a part contain the whole? Is the great chain that draws all to agree and drawn supports upheld by God or thee? This is only a short part of this essay written by Alexander Pope back in 1730s. He's making the argument at that time for the existence of order in the world. And he says he knows it's order because God made it. That it's unified. Therefore, he says, it is only our inferior vision that perceives disunity, and it is each person's duty to strive for the good and the orderly. Well, I am taking you down the rabbit hole of my brain and the trail that rabbit followed. Okay, bear with me. It could be a roller coaster. So 400 years later, I'm on my morning walk, pondering this whole idea of order, and how is it going to come together? And I'm listening, as usual, to a podcast. Again, it's On Being with Krista Tippett, and the guest happens to be Suzanne Simard. She was the author of Finding the Mother Tree, Discovering the Wisdom of the Forest. So I've got this order question rolling around in my head, and Krista and Suzanne are saying, a forest is a single organism. Well, how can that be? Simard has actually proven that the trees communicate with each other, the wood wide web. Their interconnectedness extends from the branches of their canopy, all interwoven, to the root systems, intertwined deep in the earth. They are nourished and supported in a symbiotic relationship with bacteria, fungi, archaea, all of these guys exchanging carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, filtering water, and so on. So this is the picture that comes up. Well, that reminded me, I don't know why, it is a rabbit hole, but that reminded me of a documentary that I saw about 1.5 years ago about fractals. Show of hands, who knows what a fractal is? Hey, all right. Well, I'm about to give you another picture, okay? So the idea that I got from that documentary is that fractals are the building blocks of nature. But I needed to know more, so I consulted Miss Google. And here are some of what I learned. Fractal is a pattern that the laws of nature repeat at different scales. Fractals are infinitely complex patterns that are self-similar across scales. You see, we see them in nature. We see it in the mountains, we see it in the trees, we see it in the rocks, we see it in the water. Fractals are created by repeating a simple process over and over in ongoing feedback loop. driven by recursion. I had to pull out my dictionary. Recursion is the process of repeating items in a self-similar way. So, driven by recursion, fractals are images of dynamic systems and pictures of chaos. I like this because of the movement of the waves in the water. That's the movement of fractal. So the term fractal was coined by the mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot in 1975. As I was going through this and I saw this documentary a year and a half ago, I thought, why have I never heard about fractals? I mean, it was totally new to me. Well, the reason is he didn't define this until 11 years after I was finished with my formal education. Isn't it amazing what we still have to learn? So he defined this in his seminal work, The Fractal Geometry of Nature, as a rough or fragmented geometric shape that can be split into parts, each of which is at least approximately a reduced size copy of the whole. Now we can do Mandelbrot's set. There you go. So this is his computerized, this is what he did with that formula working through IBM and his mathematics background. So this is the picture, the computerized picture that he comes up to demonstrate fractal. But they are not just complex shapes and pretty pictures generated by computers. Fractals permeate our lives. They appear in places as tiny as the membrane cells in our body, as majestic as the solar system. They are unique, irregular patterns left behind by unpredictable movements of the chaotic world at work. So, I have a hard time saying it, Mandelbrot mathematically proved order in the appearance of chaos. So I began to think about how fractals translate to my spiritual understanding. In my spiritual vocabulary, what would be a fractal? And how could I use it? And just as I began to put some legs on that idea, one more click of the remote and Greg Braden showed up on my screen from the Gaia Network in Missing Link. And he was saying, we are living fractal patterns in our body, our emotions, our relationships. This connected me to another aspect of fractals, fractal as energy patterns. Braden says energy is information because the energy of our simulation, and simulation is what he calls his concept of reality, in which we are all connected holograms within holograms. That was kind of heavy for me, and I did not go down that rabbit hole. Okay? But we live in a divine matrix. So I thought about that. This would be the postmodern concept of interconnectedness that we saw a couple of months ago. Remember Indra? Indra, the Hindu myth of Indra's net, in which we are representative points of light at each intersection of the net, where all are affected by a change in an each, Butterworth's eachness in the allness. It says each point of energy matters. So Braden is saying the reality we live in, this energy, is governed by the fractal code, the fractal formula. This is where it really took on meaning for me. He says the beauty of knowing this is once we can change the variable, once we shift the way we think, the way we solve our problems, once we change our self-esteem, once we change the way we value our lives or the way we value other people, that's the equivalent of changing the variable in the code. And what he's saying is that with the awareness of our patterns, we can divinely order our life. So let's look at ourselves for a moment. Taking off the lens of judgment, we look back over our life with 20/20 hindsight and can notice some of our patterns. For instance, I think I first began to develop a pattern of abundance when I was a young teenager. Working on a farm with my aunts, uncles, and cousins, I earned enough money to buy my own school clothes and supplies one summer. That was cool stuff. So as you begin to identify these patterns, you'll probably notice a pivotal event in which the seed was planted. That summer, working in tobacco, it was that long ago, was the first time I earned any substantial money. I tasted what abundance feels like, and I liked it. Later, even when I had to rummage through purses and car seats to find loose change for fast food, I never felt poor. I have a belief in abundance and all-sufficiency that I have nurtured and continue to grow over a lifetime. Of course, there are the other not-so-desirable patterns that emerged. There was hurt and retribution, and there was drama and more drama. And man, doesn't that get old in a hurry. Sometimes it takes us a few rounds to figure it out and to recognize, my goodness, I've been here before, and all too many times. Until we garner the wherewithal to change the variable and take a different trajectory. So this intellectual exploration of fractals was very interesting and exciting for me. It was a deep dive into another way to understand the energy of life. Still, what does it mean to me? How can I use this information? In February's Science of Mind, Reverend Dr. Ron Fox says, every issue in our life is determined by our consciousness. Where have we heard that before? When we do our inner work, we become a conscious partner in our conscious evolution. Braden says, when we begin to recognize the patterns, we also see where the patterns start and where they end. You can begin to have aha moments, and you can see where you sabotage yourself based on events so far in your past you don't even remember when they happened. The key, according to Braden, is to recognize the pattern exists. We are not slaves to these patterns. When we recognize these patterns, we can see the place where our choices are most potent. Now, Braden has developed a way to use the Mandelbrot equation to identify cycles of patterns and points of optimum opportunity for change. So this was fascinating for me. Anyway, he says these patterns direct general fields of energy and at what point the conditions of a seed event may repeat in our lives. So through this equation, he has figured out, based on his age, when he's going to have another pivotal choice point. Well, that's way over my head. But this is what we know. We are free will beings in this world. And we have the opportunity to make a choice at any time we recognize the patterns are actually playing out. So Braden's experience fit the Mandelbrot formula, so he can now predict those optimum points for himself. It may look chaotic, but it's order. Order in the forest, order in our bodies, order in our relationships, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I don't know where the trees fit into consciousness, but we humans have self-awareness and the ability to use consciousness. We have free will, the ability to choose using understanding and wisdom and all of the 12 powers and more. Fractal theory translates into energy of choices. Consider the flow of the creative process. And we hear this. We hear it almost every week, and certainly in Reverend Eileen's Metaphysics 4 class. Mind, idea, expression. Okay? The flow of the creative process. So, consider the trajectory of a fractal as what I believe to be true about myself. If I believe I'm worthy, no, that's not where I'm going. If I believe I'm unworthy, that energy will be my experience until I have a seed event and I can change that. If I believe the universe is out to get me, I live in victim consciousness. So these are two examples of how being in a more or less unconscious state, we follow those beliefs unaware, and we create what my friends, the Reverend Doctors Bill and Cher Holton, call diddly squat order. Not how we want our life to show up. On the other hand, if I believe the universe is a place of all sufficiency, and I do, then my experience will be of abundance. If I believe the universe is a friendly place, then optimism and victor consciousness will be my experience. And that would be divine order. So I believe it is our beliefs that determine the trajectory of our experience. We have the tools to divinely order our situations and our lives. And I've just mentioned some of our attributes. We're conscious beings. We're self-aware. We think. And we have free will to choose. And you know what the tools are. And they are spiritual practices. Okay, so let's go forth and direct our little fractal selves in the trajectory of divine order. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, it's time now when we have the opportunity to give back into this ministry. And for those who are, since we are still not doing a lot of hugging and touching, for those who are in-house, the baskets are available in the back for your love offerings and gifts. For those who may be watching digitally, just push one of those little buttons, and we are ever so grateful for the flow of abundance through this ministry. So let us affirm together, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, that this is so.